So welcome everyone. My name is Isabella Kapur. I'm the curatorial assistant at the Drawing Center, and I'm also an illustrator. Today I'm going to be talking to you about Neo Rauch, Austin Boden, from the Floor, an exhibition that was on view at the Drawing Center from April of 2019 to July of 2019. And more broadly, I'll be talking to you about the artist Neo Rauch and his drawing practice in particular. Before we get started with that, I do want to read off a couple of thanks first. So just some acknowledgements. Free DrawNow workshops like this one are made possible by the Cy Twombly Foundation. The Drawing Center's education and community programs are made possible by the May and Samuel Rudin Family Foundation, Inc. Major support is provided by the Evelyn Toll Family Foundation. Additional support is provided in part by public funds from the New York City Department of Cultural Affairs in partnership with the City Council, the Robert Rauschenberg Foundation, and the Milton and Sally Avery Arts Foundation. So thank you to all of those people for allowing us to have this event today. So I will jump in and show you some images by this artist in a minute, but I'm actually going to upend the way we've been doing these little DrawNows a little bit by asking you to do part of our drawing exercise before you see anything, before we talk about the artist at all. Reason being is that I do want everyone to really get started on this exercise without having a preconceived notion of what they're making. Also, you may have noticed that I've asked you if you have them available to have water-based media, something like coffee or watercolor. So we want to give that time to dry before we get to the second part of our activity. So what I'm going to ask you to do is take your paper and your coffee, tea, watercolor, or the broadside of a pencil. And I'm going to ask you to just make amorphous shapes on your page, something like this. This was done with coffee, or else something like this done with graphite, done with a pencil. So if you do it with a pencil, use the broadside, smudge it around a bit. Don't try and make it look like anything. You can feel free to make a couple of these if you want, depending on how many drawings you want to do at the end. We're really just queuing these up so that we have them ready later on. And while you're doing that, which should be fairly mindless, hopefully, I'll start talking a little bit about our artist. So today I'll be taking you through the work of Neo Rauch. Neo Rauch is a German artist. He's particularly known for his paintings. He's actually not known for being an artist who draws. However, as the exhibition at the Drawing Center last year suggests, he actually does create a lot of drawing work, enough in fact that there were 120 drawings in his exhibition at the Drawing Center. And today we'll be looking at how drawing functions in his practice as an artist, as a painter, and also delving a little bit into where he draws his inspiration from and how he, as someone with a large degree of technical training, understands form and also messes with form, messes with expectations in his drawings. So just a little bit of further background, Neo Rauch is a German artist. He's known for being part of the New Leipzig School. This is a school of German artists, obviously based in Leipzig. People who started working particularly in the 90s after the reunification of Germany. So Neo Rauch grew up in East Germany. And he is particularly trained in, and this group of artists in particular is known for being trained with a high degree of technical skill, very traditional kind of Western artistic training. So he's someone who really understands the human form, shadow, highlight, perspective, all of these things, which will become very apparent as I start showing you his work. I'll just put something up on the screen now, as I think you've all probably gotten down something on your page. So what you're seeing here is just an image from the Drawing Center exhibition to give you a sense of truly the scale, the amount of drawing work that he creates. Neo Rauch is an artist, as I said, who's particularly known for his paintings. In the Drawing Center version of the exhibition, we had a couple of his paintings on paper interspersed with the drawings in order to give, you know, a sense of how his drawings relate to his painted works. So you can see here, you can really get a sense for just how many drawings he does. The interesting thing, of course, as I mentioned, is that Neo Rauch doesn't consider himself someone who draws. In fact, he, when the Drawing Center curator who worked on this exhibition, Brett Littman, went to his studio to see if there were any drawings that would make a good drawing exhibition, Neo Rauch basically greeted him with, "Oh, I don't really think I have many drawings. You can go look in that flat file over there. You might find a couple of things, but I don't really draw." Of course, as you can see, there are many, many, many drawings, enough that the 120 in the Drawing Center exhibition didn't even cover a fraction of the amount of material that was in his studio. And this is really because he creates these works very quickly and without really thinking about it. So what will happen when Neo Rauch is in the studio is he'll take up a piece of paper in the middle of doing a painting. He'll take up a piece of paper, jot down an idea, get down something that he's thinking about, get down a visual, and then quite literally often throw it on the floor, forget about it, and go back to working. So it's a very organic part of his process and not necessarily something that he thinks very consciously about. In fact, his drawings, by and large, are not made to be seen by people. It's very unusual that he agreed to have all of his drawings on view, and he was very uncomfortable with it in a way. And they're also works that you can really see in the visual of the work, the way that he doesn't treat them preciously. He doesn't think of them as these final kind of objects. A great example of that, as I said, the Drawing Center's exhibition was called Neo Rauch, Austin Boden, From the Floor. When I say they were from the floor and that he throws them on the floor, I'm not kidding. As you can see here, there's literally a footprint on this drawing. And this isn't by any means the only drawing from the exhibition that had a footprint on it. There are multiple examples of this. So they're literally on the floor. He's not being careful or precious with them at all. As we think about how Neo Rauch creates his drawings and the kind of environment that he creates them in, I also want to talk a little bit about where he's pulling his imagery from and what imagery in particular he's known for in his works, both drawing and painting. So here, I'm actually going to ask you to, again, sound off in the comments, as we did when we introduced ourselves a little bit before. Is there anything that's standing out to anyone about this drawing? Is there anything that you're noticing immediately that's jumping out to you? I can keep rambling, but I would love to engage you guys a little bit. So if anybody has any ideas of things and observations, there can be no wrong answers. The bunny ears and the green tie. So the bunny ears are a big one. So obviously, that's very apparent very quickly. These odd headdresses. I'm also seeing the car, limited palette, the way he ignores perspective and scale. Yes, so we will talk expressionless faces. We will talk about all of these things. So let's start with the bunny ears, because that's the first one I saw. So something you'll notice in Neo Rauch's work is that it features a lot of individuals, a lot of people, especially a lot of men. And these men, by and large, these people, by and large, do not look at us. They're very internal. They look away or at what they're doing. Often they're performing sometimes hard to understand forms of labor. Work is something, and the labor of these characters is something that runs throughout Neo Rauch's work. But something you'll notice about these figures is there's often odd little details to them. Either they'll have weird elongated limbs, or very often they'll be wearing hats or have weird headgear on. These bunny hats are a great example of that, and they get us to another point that's a through line in his work. So when we look at these bunny hats on these men in suits, it obviously strikes us as odd immediately. Bunny hats are something that we associate with little kids. When I see a bunny hat, I immediately think of Louise from Bob's Burgers. I don't think of a man in a suit, right? So what Neo Rauch is doing is he's putting his characters, and he does this consistently, he's putting his characters in weird, awkward, sometimes embarrassing situations. And by doing this, he's kind of seeing in his drawings especially if they can stand up to the humiliation. He said this. They can stand up to that humiliation or awkwardness. And if they can, sometimes they get promoted into a painting. Not very often, but sometimes. As we get to the end of my little talk, I'll show you an example where someone very obviously gets promoted. But regardless of whether they're in a drawing or a painting, they are faced with these embarrassing, weird situations. Something else that I saw someone point out was the weird perspective and also this kind of vehicle. So Neo Rauch is also known for creating environments that, as you look at them, they start to make sense. As I said, he's very knowledgeable about perspective, kind of traditional artistic principles. But the more that you try and make sense, the more that you try and make sense of what's happening, the more they fall apart, right? So as you follow a line back or try and go down further into this structure here, it really does start to become an abstract, amorphous thing. The environment stops making sense. And this is something that, again, runs throughout his work, the way in which things cease making sense the more you look. In fact, it's a way that he gets you to engage more with his work, is by creating these moments where things fall apart and don't make sense, and you keep having to try and go back and understand what's happening. I've also seen a couple comments about the car. Someone says it reminds them of Twin Peaks. There's this kind of this spooky retro vibe. And this is something that we're going to absolutely talk about next. So again, I'm going to ask you, what's the first thing that stands out to you about this work that I've just put on screen? There's one very obvious thing. Narrative, thank you. Yes, narrative, the speech bubble, that's the big thing immediately. So I'm sure this is reminding many of you of a comic book, and there's a reason for that. So Neo Rauch grew up reading comics. He grew up reading Golden Age comics, comics from the 50s and 60s in particular. And he also grew up reading pulp novels. And you can see very much the influence of this in the way he draws. Beyond just this very obvious speech bubble, you see this very stark contrast between the white of the paper and the black of the pen is something that you can very much recognize in a comic book illustration. So when I talk about him being influenced by pulp novels and by comic books, you can think of pulp novel covers like these that I'm showing on screen. And you can notice that there are certain things that resonate with his work here, among them being the color sense, you know, this aqua color in the Amazing Stories cover. You'll notice throughout his work, these kind of burnt reds and oranges show up throughout his work. And then also you'll notice these sci-fi elements. So when we looked at that car before, or when we look at these shapes, these weird shapes in this drawing here that almost look like the bodies of airplanes or helicopters, they really are reminiscent of retrofuturist imaginings of vehicles, like the one you're seeing here, right? They've got that kind of metallic tubular aspect to them. You can really see how he's pulling from this era in terms of the kind of unrealistic or sci-fi elements. And then in this image, which is from the first page of the Flash Gordon comic, you really get a sense for the way that his drawing resonates with comic book drawing, right? You see the stark black and white. Again, you've got that retrofuturist kind of imagining of what vehicles look like. And then you've also got the way that he dresses people, which as we go through, you'll start to notice more. He dresses people very much in these kinds of 1940s, 1950s, 1960s outfits, right? Very rarely do you see someone in a more modern outfit in one of Neo Rauch's works. We'll talk a little, he also reaches back further, which we'll talk about a little bit later. But just to say that this era, and particularly illustration and comics of this era, are very influential to Neo Rauch's work. This, in fact, becomes circular. He's made novel cover illustrations. These are two examples of that. So you can see that he really is very aware of this connection and is actively thinking about it. So when we look at a painting like the one that I've brought up here, this is from 2001. It's called Falle, which means pitfall or trap. For the person from Berlin, I'm sorry for my German pronunciation. I do not speak German. What we're seeing here, of course, is a lot of the elements that I've already picked out for you in his work that we've talked about so far. So for instance, you'll notice that these figures are doing labor. They're doing weird work that isn't necessarily meant to make sense to us. For instance, this man is pulling up some sort of weird pool that these odd shrew platypus creatures are trying to crawl into. The woman behind him is running to who knows where, and then there's a man with a pole. And as you follow the composition up, you start to see some of these buildings that are very kind of mid-century architecture-inspired buildings. These elements that are very sci-fi, like this floating piece of earth. Of course, the speech bubble, which he's moved away from in his more recent work, despite the fact that that influence of comics is still very much present. And then as we move all the way up, you get to a point where the composition kind of falls into pure abstraction. You've got these structures that could be clouds, but they're tubular, and if you look at them closely, they really are their own kind of thing, right? The important thing here is that as you're looking at a work like this, especially knowing, right, that there's a speech bubble, that there are these hints that this should be narrative. As you're looking at this, you try to figure out what's going on, but ultimately you can't. And this is because Neo Rauch's work, by and large, has no explanation, right? These scenes don't have a story behind them. They're using this language that we recognize as being narrative, but there is no narrative. And this is a tactic that he uses in order to engage us more fully with what we're seeing, right? So we want to figure out this narrative. We never will, but we want to. And so we look more closely. We try and figure out what everyone's doing. We try and make sense of all of these moments that fall apart the more we look at it. And this is a very clever tactic that Neo Rauch very intentionally takes in order to get us to engage with what we're seeing. As we move on, you'll notice I talked about those buildings. So as we're thinking about other things that influence him, his buildings also come from a very specific place. While the compositions themselves are made up, for instance, this is not drawn from an actual landscape, what you're seeing here are buildings that are influenced very much by where Neo Rauch grew up, the place where he lives, so Leipzig, and also where he grew up in Aschersleben. A great example of that also is this kind of attenuated tower in this work. This form is something that appears often in his work. It's something that you can pick out, this kind of tower. You can pick it out in many of his drawings, and you can pick out a direct correlation between this kind of form and more generally the architecture that he draws. And his upbringing, both the mid-century architecture, of course, referencing his upbringing in the 1960s, and then more generally, elements like this referencing Aschersleben, his hometown, right? So you can see that tower back there. It's a very obvious kind of one-to-one reference. As we go through, you can see just another example of a looser one of his drawings. Again, a building, a speech bubble, these things that we've talked about. And then as we get here, we start to get to some of the elements that are going to become relevant to our drawing activity. So what you're seeing here in particular are these two vehicles, right? And of course, these vehicles are those kind of weird, slick shapes that we recognize from the kind of retro-futurist aesthetic that I've talked about already. But what you'll also notice is all of the splotching of paint on the page. Now, as I said, as I've talked about, Neo Rauch is not precious with his work when he's working in his studio, with his drawings at least when he's working in his studio. They get messy, they get stepped on, paint gets on them. Often he'll also wipe his brushes on pieces of paper and then go back and draw onto them. So what we're seeing here, for instance, is the way that this kind of laissez-faire attitude towards the paper actually feeds into the process of developing ideas on these drawings. For instance, here, you're seeing this swipe of green that is very much a part of articulating the shape of this vehicle, right? It gives you a starting off point for creating this almost like futuristic hover taxi shape. Down here, you can see that this green was probably added in and then, or enhanced to really create the shape of this vehicle. And then the drawing was done and then more green perhaps was even added on top of that. And again, you can get the sense that there's kind of a symbiosis between the messiness of these paint splotches and this development of imagery that might one day get promoted into a painting. Again, you can see that in the next image. We have, for instance, this man here. Oh, whoops, sorry. This man here who, I hope you can see my cursor, whose little legs you can see the hints of in the green strokes that have been brushed onto the page. So those brush strokes really do form a kind of jumping off point, right, for this man's entire pose, right? We've got one stroke here for one leg, one stroke here for the other leg, and then even the curve of his spine is articulated by these brush strokes. The same thing is done here with this arm coming around and also the volume of this figure's pants, right? So we have these moments where the drawing and the kind of messiness, non-preciousness work in tandem for the development of ideas. Something else you'll notice, and something I alluded to before, is that Neo Rauch isn't pulling exclusively from mid-century, mid-20th century. He's also very knowledgeable about art history. As I said, he has extensive formal training. And so, of course, you're seeing figures here who have a much older kind of form of dress. And this is very much resonant with the fact that he's highly aware of art history and the imagery of art history as well. One example, of course, being that he's particularly influenced by Peter Bruegel the Elder, whose work you can see here. And what you'll notice, among other things, are some of those colors, again, that you've been noticing throughout his work, this kind of bright blue, those burnt red colors, and then also, again, this mass of people kind of going about their business, not really concerned with the viewer's perception of them. And especially for us as a modern audience, sometimes going about business that is incomprehensible, right? So when you really look at that in comparison with something like this, which is one of the more recent paintings that was in the Drawing Center's exhibition, you really do get a sense for the kind of relationship, right, between both color and composition between these two. And again, you can see those moments where things really start to fall apart and you can't totally make sense of what's going on, or figures are even completely flattened. Things get weird, basically. And then, of course, another example of a figure who's in an older form of dress. So these many, many references coming into play. And this gets at something else, of course, which is that Neo Rauch is someone who has an extremely extensive kind of visual memory and many, many places that he's pulling into for these images. As you would have to have in order to create these kind of timeless compositions where so many things are happening from different eras and different places and in some cases, different realities. Now we're really getting towards the activity, but just to mention before we truly get there, something that you'll see here is another figure who I really want to pick apart a little bit more extensively. This character is called Mr. Mistake Man. So you'll notice that this figure is wearing a superhero mask. He's a superhero, and he is in fact the superhero of mistakes. He is also an alter ego for the artist. You'll notice that he is standing in front of a canvas and holding a paintbrush. So Mr. Mistake Man, my hero too, Hannes, I agree. Mr. Mistake Man is someone who really represents the artist's acknowledgement that he makes mistakes both in the studio and outside the studio, and that those mistakes are an inherent part of what he's doing, right? So when we look at all of those brush strokes and the mess that happens on these pieces of paper and all of that, it's all part of it. He knows that it's going to happen. It's not something he's fighting against. It is something he's maybe making fun of a little bit here or exploring his discomfort with here by really, making fun of himself, saying he's Mr. Mistake Man, although aren't we all? But the real central idea that I want you to take away here is that idea of making mistakes is something that is central to the generation of his ideas, right? It's going to happen. As we go through just a couple more examples of how these works kind of help him think about his paintings, get ideas down, that kind of thing. very obviously here with thumbnails. Another figure with a weird hat, just to give you another example of that kind of composition. Another figure in a weird hat, and also some very obviously kind of sci-fi elements, like this odd fungi rock meteor situation, just to give you a little bit more to think about as you're thinking about, and yes, it is a truly amazing hat, as you're thinking about how Neo Rauch draws and what he draws. And then finally, I said that we would visit a character who did get promoted from a drawing to a painting, and this is in fact that character. This is a character known as the dentist, the one in the top hat, I should say. It's a character known as the dentist. You may notice that he's quite literally feeding someone feces, and this is probably the most obvious example of one of those characters making it into a painting. So you can see he's almost in exactly the same pose. He is again feeding someone feces. He's wearing the same top hat. He's in the same outfit, everything. So sometimes the characters do withstand this humiliation and they make their way into larger compositions. And I should say, in case I haven't, that when I talk about the paintings being larger compositions, they are massive. They are, by and large, well over 7 feet tall. They're very, very, very big. So there's a lot that goes into them. And there's a lot of time while working on them to take up a small piece of paper, get an idea down, and then go back to working on a painting. So finally, we will start getting into our drawing activity. So I'm just going to show you this last guy to kind of get you thinking about it. No, they're not multiple panels of paper. To answer a question in the chat very quickly, it's one large piece of paper, and what he actually does is he'll paste it to the wall using wood glue, which I just find this really interesting, actually is an effective way of making the paper archival and protecting it from oil paint. So he oil paints on paper, and wood glue protects the paper from being degraded by the oil paint, which is very clever. But it's a single piece. So as we move into our activity, and as we move into our activity also, you can feel free to keep putting questions in the chat and I'll answer them as you're drawing. But just to introduce what we're doing, you'll notice that I've been talking about getting things messy, making mistakes, and using those mistakes to generate ideas. So what I want you to do is I want you to take the pieces of paper that I had you prepare before, stained with coffee, watercolor, tea, or else with the broadside of a pencil. And before you do any drawing, I want you to look at it. And I want you to really think about what you're seeing in this shape, right? So it's kind of a Rorschach test kind of activity. I want you to really think about what you're seeing. And before you draw, because I know you're all on computers or phones, I want you to look up an image of whatever it looks like to you. So if you're seeing a person's face in profile, for instance, I want you to Google person's face in profile. And then I want you to use one of those images as a reference. So look at that image, absolutely look at it while you're drawing, and try and draw whatever you're seeing over top of the shape that you have, that you've generated using whatever material. The hope here is that as you're looking between a reference and really trying to draw what you're seeing, and this shape that is making you think of that thing, you'll really start to think about the form, right? You'll really start to think about why this darker space looks like an eye socket to you, why this lighter space looks like a brow bone, things like that. It doesn't have to be a human face. I'm using that as an example, but whatever you see is valid. A lot of you will probably see people just because our brains are tuned to see people in abstract shapes. But I really want you to think about what you're seeing and think about why you're seeing what you're seeing in this shape. My hope here is that A, this will help you generate a new idea for a drawing, and B, it should help you to simulate some of Neo Rauch's kind of very in tune visual memory, right? He's someone who has this extremely extensive visual training, and that's something that we're hoping to simulate here. So I'm going to give you approximately 15 minutes to go ahead and do that. You can, again, drop questions in the chat as you see fit while we're doing this. And I'm also going to put on some music so that we don't have an awkward silence the entire time we're drawing. I'm going to put on David Bowie because I find it to be good music to draw to. That's time, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me. You can feel free to hold up your drawings if you would like to share them with other people in this session. If you want everyone to be able to see them a little bit more clearly, you can also take a photo and tag @DrawingCenter on Instagram or hashtag the Drawing Center on Instagram, and maybe we'll share some of them on our story. I'm seeing some awesome stuff. Wow. I really do hope some of you share these online so that we can see them more clearly, because it's a little hard in this situation to really, get a sense. But thank you all so much for joining me today. Again, I'm Isabella Kapur, and this has been another DrawNow for the Drawing Center. I hope you all have a wonderful day and stay safe. And I will hopefully see you all again sometime.